Good afternoon, delegates and all the organizers. I'm Dr. Sandra Gertenbach, and I'm sharing work that I've done on the imperatives for the advancement of freight intermodalism in South Africa, and specifically a systems thinking approach that led me to focus on intermodal interfaces that drive value. Just to get some perspective, South Africa is a large country. I've superimposed it on a map of Europe. You can see there are a number of long distance corridors, 6 to 1500 kilometers between production areas, economic hubs, and the ports, the 8 commercial ports. We have a rail network, 20,000 route kilometers and about 30,000 track kilometers. Very well established road network, more than 158,000 kilometers of paved road. But what we've seen is about 6 million more vehicles on roads than we had in 94, about 30 years ago. And this means that we need innovation in developing freight solutions. Also, just in terms of our freight logistics system, what you see here is the way that freight flows in the country from primarily the big ports in Cape Town and in Durban and Richards Bay. Then we have about 80% of that traffic on road, and only 20% on rail. And with increases in market demand, we expect that to grow significantly, particularly for the kinds of goods that are suited to intermodal solutions. So there should be way more on rail in order for the country to have more sustainable transport solutions. What we've seen is that our rail network has deteriorated, specifically in the years since COVID, so it's not fulfilling its transport task. And we have extra heavy, extra long road vehicles that are causing congestion on highways, at ports, and at border posts going into other African countries, and in the process decimating the road infrastructure. It simply isn't designed to cope with those levels of traffic. Also for rail, there's a huge market share gap in palletized freight, which again calls for intermodal solutions to be developed. We know that road has quite an advantage in terms of the number of pallets that can fit in a taut liner, giving them that footprint advantage over a rail wagon. But we need to ensure that the best modal choices are made at any given time for the circumstances, for the freight type, and the distance that that freight has to travel. But we also need good connectivity to the ports, terminals, distribution centers, and other nodes in the transport system. I talk about a complex problem in that we seem to react to events. So when the roads are congested, we find money to build another highway, rather than finding solutions that promote complementarity between road and rail. And over time, people adapt to these trends. So rail gets worse and worse, road gets stronger, border posts get more congested, Larger ships are arriving at the ports, and we don't have that back of port capacity to evacuate the number of ports that, of containers that are offloaded. But somehow we adapt to those trends. And what's really required is to address the structural aspects, the policies, the processes, and even more so, the mental models, the assumptions we make about road and rail and ports, the assumptions we make about intermodalism, and how those can be applied and leveraged to develop better solutions, instead of always addressing the quick fix, visible events which are not sustainable, rather than working together at an industry level with less expensive designs and approaches that address structural issues and mental models for sustainability. So I talk about working together at an industry or supply chain level where you have a mindset with win-win conditions, rather than the many firms, the logistics service providers, the road hauliers, the railway company, all competing to optimize their own goals and values. And ultimately, that detracts from macro-level national outcomes for long-term sustainability and growth. And people often talk about the interactions that are required in technologies to achieve intermodal solutions that are more sustainable, but we apply less attention to the human side, the actors who integrate and connect all these system parts. And we don't know how those actors will behave. They may behave in unknown and random, unpredictable ways that diminish the potential of a more collaborative approach. So the research that I did, very much a qualitative research design, good few months on documentary analysis, looking at benchmarks, looking at the extent of carbon emissions, the imbalances in capacity. I then went on and interviewed 10 subject matter experts as primary data collection to get a transdisciplinary view, their experience, their expertise, and what the different disciplines imply. And then the greater aspect, in order to address that meso-level supply chain interaction, I got together 2 focus groups that were almost a proxy for the real intermodal transport system. And we had a facilitated online discussion about what should be done, what could be done to improve the system. Obviously, all these transcripts were documented, analyzed, and synthesized to develop themes and ultimately develop a systemic conceptual framework. So the focus groups was quite promising, an eye-opener. I had an artist record the discussion in real time, so you have a rich picture of the primary data that was collected from focus groups. Very willing and open discussions with prominent executive industry actors from road, the rail, ports, logistics service providers, government representatives, freight customers. And what came out was people suggesting a range of interventions, from hard technologies to softer people aspects, as well as the need to address policy and actor roles. But all of them highlighted the interdependencies in those parts that could be leveraged if we adopt a mindset of striving for better system outcomes rather than individual organization outcomes. And at a systemic level, we found that the actors expressed their willingness to work together, the urgency of addressing the issue, the need to break down barriers, and to rise above their self-interest to drive system performance for the good of the industry and the country. The themes, I won't go into all of them in much detail, but the one theme I've named so much at stake, indicating the systemic challenges, the early warnings that have pretty much gone unheeded, with very negative outcomes and consequences, and some attribute that to the lack of a national roadmap, lack of active role clarity and strategic direction, lack of execution and enablement of the system, but also inadequate institutional capability, system structures that are evolving and emerging but don't necessarily get to the root of the problem. As I said, all seeking solutions, acknowledging that there are choices and trade-offs, but more specifically indicating the need to work together at the interfaces in order to drive value in intermodal systems, which required collaboration, coordination, and cooperation. Private sector, government, customers all working together. And then at a systemic level, addressing those mental models to find congruence between the goals that are sometimes at odds, a systems outcome chain that highlighted the approach to finding congruent goals that could unite the actors in the system and shift those mindsets for change. So if you look at those interfaces that could drive value, there's so much to say here, but it's all about connected processes and creating a steady rhythm and tempo of continuous, predictable, and fluid freight flow across the supply chain, making those choices at the time of whether to use road or rail, or in extreme circumstances and urgency where perhaps air freight, although more expensive, could be required. And it's about having effective transitions between the nodes and the modes, and effective transfers at those interfaces or touch points that make or break the flow of freight in the value chain. But ultimately, we need an overall integrated solution that has got to be cheaper than simply rail or a road solution. That integrated solution has to override the advantages and disadvantages of either mode. If you look at the interfaces connecting the system parts, I've applied what we call the TIPS model: technology, innovation, and people working together in the system. So coordinating, applying technology and innovation to develop equipment, to develop information systems, to develop those modal alternatives and buffers, coordinate schedules, and then merging technology and people to build cooperation, aligning around standardized processes, procedures, activities and resources, communication methods for seamless and connected flows, how to share resources to optimize the capacity of each resource, and then combining innovation and people to build that multi-actor interaction between those players at a meso level, a supply chain level in the industry, where they willingly engage and engage collectively to define the goals, to agree on the goals, and develop the interventions that they themselves will implement. Isolate the obstructions and find places of opportunity. And that is where we hope we could drive value in the collective application of technology, innovation, and people to achieve those system performance goals. Also, in terms of system goal congruence, just to narrow it down, rather than having vague objectives for efficiency and cost effectiveness, but using that collaboration, cooperation, and coordination to develop interfaces between the nodes and modes, those exchange points, optimize first and last mile, develop the corridors, and build solutions for consolidation where we could get economies of scale and cost. In doing so, have an output that is an innovative freight intermodal solution with outcomes that give us competitive value chains, competitive supply chains, efficient freight flow performance, and an outcome of improved modal balance, rather than saying we should shift more traffic from road to rail. Those solutions should help to define that optimal modal balance, and ultimately that would have an impact on the country that supports economic, social, and environmental performance. And we keep building on those congruent goals to develop those solutions, drive value at the interfaces. If I can sum up the findings of what we found to be the imperatives for advancement of intermodalism, is a systems thinking mindset and systemic win-win approaches to advance the development, and all of the parts must work. The rail system has to work, but if we are only attempting to optimize some subparts of the system individually, we're unlikely to achieve results in overall systemic performance. So it's about starting at those interfaces, building those synergies and the complementarity between those parts, with all striving for that congruent goal, collectively to build the system actors' unity towards an outcome with an impact on the country. Collaboration, coordination, and cooperation that we achieve through constant synthesis of people, technology, and innovation. And in that way, we can leverage both hard and soft constructs that are imperative for building and advancing the system. And in South Africa, we have some financial and other constraints. It could make sense to adopt local modular approaches that could help us accelerate implementation and make sure that we have a master plan that enables the integration of modules, where we gain benefits of speed learning and reduced cost and risk. And also that could benefit an integrated performance framework where we set goals, share data, track progress, and monitor and celebrate those successes. So this was about a place to start. Actors uniting around a congruent goal, working at the interfaces to build those synergies so that we can accelerate and gain momentum in the mobilization of intermodal solutions. In conclusion, freight intermodal performance is a national development priority for South Africa for sustainability as well as for other national outcomes. We have to restore our essential rail condition, improve the performance, and use those intermodal solutions to realize outcomes rather than stating broad goals. So balanced application of constrained financial resources, allocation to road or to rail or to ports, to align and synergize capacity, an outcome that would enable a shift of traffic from road to rail, better maritime connectivity, and improved regional integration. I believe that the changes will manifest over time, but we have to start now and start at an industry level. Our freight system got crisis proportions following COVID and a downturn in the economy. To the extent that the President has established a logistics crisis committee earlier this year, aiming to break the self-reinforcing, self-perpetuating vicious cycle that we've tried to break out over the last 30 years, but have been unable to overcome inertia. And we can use technology, innovation, and people to create value at those interfaces and build a freight logistics system that enables and supports the economy, the environment, and the people of South Africa. Thank you.